Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
And thank you for tuning into the GSMC Relationship Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And I am your host, Giovanna. Oh boy, I'm a little sleepy today, I'm not gonna lie. Just got out of work, so I'm going to try to just push through and make the best of it. Because today I'm super excited because I actually found some really awesome articles to research for this topic, because there is a lot of information out there right now. Today we're talking about gaslighting. So gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse. So we're going to talk about that. What is it? What to do if you're being gaslighted? How to spot it, that kind of thing. And then later on in the show, we're going to be talking about a really interesting topic, and it's called relationship anarchy. I just found a article that was written about this, and this is actually kind of go as a follow-up a little bit to my polyamory episode, so we're going to be talking about that. And I love that article. And last but not least, we're going to be talking about some audio porn sites that you can visit. So sometimes like watching porn can feel like weird or make you feel icky, but audio porn is really awesome, and you can like listen to erotic stories. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, first things first though, gaslighting. So gaslighting, the actual definition is to manipulate someone by psychological means into questioning their own sanity. And a gaslighter will do this by denying facts, the person's feelings, and the environment around them. And so gaslighting is very common, and really, a lot of people who gaslight, which I'll kind of get into a little bit later, don't even know that they're doing it. But it's really hard to either stop it or get out of it, because typically it all has to go, it has to do with power. But I wanted to kind of talk about how the word originated, because gaslighting is kind of, when I first heard gaslighting, I didn't really understand what it meant, and it took me a while to understand what it actually entailed. And recently it's been used a lot, and it's kind of in, our society's lexicon right now. But the phrase was actually originated from a 1938 mystery thriller that was a play by a British playwright called Patrick Hamilton, called The Gaslight was the title of the play. And the play was actually made into a movie in 1944. And basically the whole thing is about a husband tries to and succeeds, manipulate his wife into thinking that she's crazy. And she doesn't know what's real anymore. And so that's when the phrase, and in the movie too, there's this scene where, and in the play, where he flickers the lights, like in the scene, in the attic, like he makes the lights flicker and then tells her that the lights aren't flickering, like just to make her think that she's crazy. And that's why it's called gaslight, because at the time the lights were lit by gas. So yeah, that's where the phrase actually comes from, which is something that I didn't know. But for researching this, I found a really great article on Vox. And the title is kind of strange, but it's called "I've Counseled Hundreds of Victims of Gaslighting. Here's How to Spot If You're Being Gaslighted. Gaslighting Explained." And it was written by Robert Stern, and it was published on January 3rd of last year, 2019. She actually wrote a book on gaslighting that came out in 2007, called The Gaslight Effect. And she has been a therapist for multiple people who have been gaslighted. And so basically gaslighting is going to come from power dynamics, and it builds on existing power dynamics. Gaslighting is most common in romantic relationships, but it can occur in any relationship that one of the people involved feel like they need to make the other person happy, and they don't want to upset them. So a people pleaser, and they want to, make the other person happy. So that being said, this can happen in friendships, in the work environment, in a work relationship. It can happen with parents, with other types of family members. It can happen anywhere, but it is most common in romantic relationships. Also, anyone can be a gaslighter, but she found that it was more common that women were gaslit by men, and the reason why that is because women typically are socialized to doubt themselves and apologize and not assert themselves. And so women are socialized and taught to not disagree and to not upset their partners, particularly their male partners. So that's why that usually is within a heterosexual dynamic with the man gaslighting the woman. All that being said, this can absolutely happen in a homosexual relationship as well. Obviously. I mean, it can happen in any type of relationship, but in a lot of clinical studies and a lot of things like that, it's with a man is gaslighting a woman. But yeah, that's not necessarily always the case. The most important aspect of gaslighting, though, is going to be one partner is undermining another partner's emotions and feelings in a way to deny their reality. And gaslighters become gaslighters to control the situation or to gain control in the moment and get control back in the relationship to feel in that change in dynamic, basically. And no one is born gaslighters. It is a learned condition, basically. So this can be picked up by observation. It can be picked up from previous relationships where they figured out what works. And the reason why people become gaslighters, because of all the social experiments, I guess, and the social awareness, is because gaslighting works. And so they're going to do it because it is a type of manipulation that is very effective, and it's really common. So the next part I'm going to get into, kind of the most important thing, is to figure out if you are being gaslit. So gaslighting is going to be used to undermine your feelings and to invalidate your feelings. And it basically can be like, I don't like that you are doing this thing. And then they're like, well, why do you even care? I'm not even doing this thing, like you're crazy, So, but we're going to get into that. So if you feel like you're being gaslit, you might ask some of these things to yourself. So you might ask yourself, am I too sensitive many times a day? You often feel confused and even crazy in the relationship. You're always apologizing, and in my opinion, the other person is never apologizing or is never at fault for anything. You can't understand why you aren't happier and why you aren't happier in the relationship. You frequently make excuses for your partner's behavior to yourself and to other people. you know something is wrong, but you can't really put your finger on what exactly is wrong in the relationship. And you start lying to avoid put downs and reality twists and that argument and things like that. And you have trouble making simple decisions, and you wonder if you aren't good enough. So these are also all symptoms that can occur if you have depression or anxiety and low self-esteem. But a good way to figure out is if you're being gaslit and if those feelings are from anxiety or another mental disorder that you may have, or if it's coming from a person, is if you only feel that way around that person, or if your symptoms of your of these are more exaggerated because of another person. So the reason when you are being gaslit, you can trace these feelings back to whoever is gaslighting you, whether it is a partner or a family member or someone you work with or a friend or whatever. You can trace it back to a specific person, and that's person who's gaslighting you will say phrases like this. And this is when I also invite you to examine your own thoughts and behaviors towards your partner. If you don't think that this is something that does apply to you, or you're listening and trying to put it into your life and put it into your past relationships, I also ask you to see if you have ever said these things to someone that you have dated or someone that you've been friends with or something like that. So some common phrases you might hear from your gaslighter are, "You're so sensitive." "You know that's just because you are so insecure." "Stopped acting crazy," or "You sound crazy. You know that, don't you?" "You're just paranoid." "You just love trying to throw me off track." "I was just joking." "You're making that up." "It's no big deal." "You're imagining things." "You're overreacting." "You're always so dramatic." "Don't get so worked up." "Calm down." "That never happened." "You know you don't remember things clearly." "There's no pattern," or "You are seeing a pattern that isn't there." "You're hysterical." "There you go again. You are so ungrateful." "Nobody believes you. Why should I?" So, all of these things are going to occur during a stressful environment. So, gaslighting is most likely going to happen during arguments, and it's going to focus on topics like money, sex, your families of origins, or habits that you came into the relationship with. So, when you guys are arguing, like the woman who wrote this article uses a lot of examples with women who are with unfaithful men. For example, there was a story about one couple that she had worked with as a couples counselor, and basically when they got married, he always told her that she was bad with money, and she just kind of blew it off like, "Oh, that's so funny, that's his little quirk that he gives me." He would also say that she didn't contribute financially enough to their relationship, even though they were both very successful individuals and had good jobs. Then they decided to have kids, and she decided to stay home to raise the kids. And in turn, he got a different job that paid better, but he was traveling often. And so she kind of felt that he was distancing himself from her. And then she guessed that he was having an affair. She also felt this way because he was constantly complaining and saying that they didn't have enough money yet when at home, but when he was traveling, he would take these huge sums of money out of this checking account that they had. So she's like, yeah, he's having an affair. And when she confronted him about it, he was like, "You're imagining things." And then when she talked to him about the money and about the joint accounts, he was like, "Oh, well, you're just bad with money. That's already been established that you're not good with money." And she actually even quit couples counseling because she told her that she couldn't afford it. And but later on, she figured out that he was having an affair, like she was right the whole time. So yeah, basically gaslighters will just say like, you're imagining things and that isn't true, that isn't happening, like all this other stuff. And that's kind of what's going on and kind of their MO. And when you're gaslighting too, you're also going to feel like you don't know who to believe. You feel like, you know, you're this one person. It's so hard when you're being gaslit, because it's the reason why gaslighting had started to begin with, because there is a power dynamic there, and you do care a lot about the other person, and you don't want to upset them. And so this is why people who are gaslit will often, the gaslightee, I guess, will often lie to avoid being invalidated. And, you know, it's just a whole mess of bad behavior and a whole mess of unhealthy relationships and things like that. And often the gaslighter, is someone who doesn't know how to handle their own emotions. They want to gain control of the situation, and they don't know any other way to do that. So they'll gaslight because that is an easier way to understand their emotions and to deal with that kind of, disruption, within yourself. So for example, especially the examples that are used in this, article is a lot with infidelity and cheating on your spouse. So I'm sure what is going on here when people are gaslighting is they're trying to match the disruption within themselves. They're cheating, which is bad, and they know that's bad, so they will gaslight to make them feel better about them cheating. So that is a natural human thing that psychologically we all do. If there is something, which is also why there are some people who are extremely homophobic will come out as gay. So they have to find that balance within them, because maybe they grew up with this sense of, oh, well, being homosexual and being gay is so bad and you'll go to hell or whatever. And so they are extremely homophobic, but they themselves are gay. So they have to try to fix that within themselves. It's a very common thing that all humans do a lot. So in my personal opinion, I feel like that's what's happening a lot with gaslighting and why people gaslight, because it is a learned thing. Now, if gaslighters can understand how to adjust their emotion, not adjust their emotion, but how to understand their emotions and how to express their emotions and be able to admit that they are wrong, this is when you can move forward with not being a gaslighter any longer. But if the person who is gaslighting you isn't willing to do that, then it's almost impossible to fix that situation. Now, that is actually, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the next episode of what to do, or not the next episode. In the next segment, I'll be talking about what to do if you yourself is being gaslighted. But we are going to take a quick pause for a commercial break and be right back.
The GSMC Sex Podcast is a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. TSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet. Download the GSMC Sex Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you can find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
welcome back. So in this segment, we're going to be talking about some things that you can do if you think you're being gaslit. So the antidote to gaslighting is greater emotional awareness and self-regulation. So the whole point of gaslighting, for gaslighting to work, they are saying that what you're feeling isn't true. And so if you can teach yourself emotional awareness and self-regulation, you can say to yourself, like, no, it is true. Like, my feelings and my emotions are valid, and I know what I'm feeling, and I know what I'm feeling is real, and it's happening. The next thing that's really important to do is to identify the problem. So that's always going to be the first thing for a lot of things that we talk about. And, even for like Alcoholics Anonymous, you have to admit that you have a problem, and you have to put a name to it of what's going on. So that's kind of going back to, you feel like there's something wrong in the relationship, but you can't really put your finger on what exactly that is. So recognizing exactly what the problem is going to be really important, so you can put a name to it, and so you can start identifying it when it happens easier. The next one is going to be sort out truth from distortion. Now, in this article, she recommended that you keep a journal, a conversation journal, and this is so important. I love this idea. I think it's brilliant. Basically, you're going to write down, right after you have the conversation with the person that you think is gaslighting you, and you're going to write down exactly what happened, even with quotes if you can. And then that way you can look at it from an objective point of view later on. And you can kind of highlight where the conversation is veering off from reality into the other person's point of view. And then, after you look at the dialogue, you can write down what you felt, and then look signs for a repeated denial of your existence. Not existence, a repeated denial of your experience. Because the whole point of gaslighting, and the definition of gaslighting, is to deny what the other person is experiencing. So if you can write down exactly how you felt after the conversation, and after reading, your notes from the conversation, you can kind of figure out where your experience is coming from. And, if that person just could never see your point of view, because that's another big thing that, or a big red flag if you're being gaslit, is that the other person just cannot see your point of view, and they're not doing anything wrong. It's all on you. It's all your fault. You're all imagining it. So that is a big point. So highly recommend keeping a journal. I think that's a great idea. All right. So the next one, figure out if you're in a power struggle with your partner. Because again, gaslighting has a lot to do with power and struggling for that power. So if you find yourself having the same conversation over and over and over and over again, and you can't seem to convince them to even see your point of view, kind of like what I was talking about a little bit before, that's going to be the next step, and to figure out what type of power struggle is there. The next step is going to be give yourself the okay to give something up. And by something, I would mean the relationship. So what I like to think is, imagine the relationship not changing at all. And if it keeps going the way it's going, are you going to be happy? And kind of view it from that point of view. And allow yourself to imagine what it would be like without this gaslighting relationship, because sometimes the best way is to leave a gaslit relationship, and that can be really, really hard, because the person who's gaslighting you is going to be a big part of your life. So allow yourself to imagine what the situation would be like if you didn't have that relationship anymore. And it's going to be scary, and it's going to be anxious for you, but really just kind of look at it without any judgment, and allow yourself to imagine what that would even be like, and maybe what you could accomplish without being gaslit and that kind of thing. And then going along with that, the next step would be talk to your close friends, talk to your family, and ask them to give you the cold, hard truth about your spouse's or your partner's behavior. And they have to be brutally honest. Like, you can just be like, I'm not going to be mad. I just need you to tell me what you think about how they're treating me and how they're acting, because it's so important, especially if you haven't gotten to that emotional regularity yet and that self-awareness yet to understand that you don't need another person to validate your feelings, that your feelings are validated just by you experiencing them. If you say, I feel upset by you doing this, that is a true statement because you feel upset. No one can tell you that you're not upset. So, but if you're not there yet, and if you need your partner, from the gaslighter to say, yes, it is okay to feel that way. If you talk to your friends, your close family members, and people that you trust in your life to really have them evaluate how your spouse is or your partner is acting, that way you can see it from, okay, they too see that there's something weird going on. It's not just me. They see it too. So that can put you on a step towards validating your own emotions and going from there. The next one is going to be focus on feelings instead of on right and wrong. Kind of like what I said before, your feelings are valid, and just by you experiencing them is going to put them in the world, and just you feeling them and experiencing them makes them real, and no one else can tell you otherwise. And I think that's the most important thing that you can take from this episode and to learn about gaslighting. It is easy to get caught up in who won the argument and who is right and who is wrong. But what matters, if you leave that conversation and if you leave the argument feeling bad, feeling that you're second guessing yourself, feeling that you're not standing up for yourself, feeling that you're being walked over, and especially just second guessing, if you just feel yourself always doing that, that is the thing that you need to focus on, not who won the argument, not who was right, who was wrong, that you felt like you were second guessing yourself and that you felt those feelings of being manipulated and that kind of thing. That is, don't focus on who won the argument. Focus on what you're feeling and recognize that your feelings are important and you are feeling those feelings for a reason. They're not just, you don't just appear, they don't just happen, unless you have a mental illness or another type of diagnosis where sometimes these things happen because of the chemicals in our brain. But if dealing with this person and talking to the person who is gaslighting you makes you feel a certain way, then that is valid. Anyway, moving on. So, the next one. Remember that you can't control anyone's opinion, even if you're right. This relates to gaslighting because the other person, it's going to be really hard for you to get the other person to understand where you're coming from and to see your side and your point of view. And it's going to be hard for you to feel like you've convinced them that you're not too sensitive and that you're not too controlling and that kind of thing. It's just, you can't control their opinion. It's like some people aren't going to like you, and that's okay, but especially for gaslighters and people who are being gaslit, it's going to close to impossible to teach them or to convince them that you aren't these things that they're saying, because they can't see it from your side, unless they are really trying and really working on through therapy and counseling how to evaluate how they react to situations and evaluate their emotions. It's the only way. But you have to kind of let that go, that you're not going to be able to change their opinion about you. And last but not least, have more compassion for yourself. And this is really hard to do even when you're not in a situation where you're being gaslit. So just know that be patient with yourself. You have to give yourself compassion and give yourself patience, because it's hard enough to be able to stand up or understand your emotions and to have that emotion self-awareness and that emotional regularity when you aren't feeling confident and you're not being compassionate to yourself. It's all going to be a part of the healing process, and you have to be nice to yourself, because if you're not nice to yourself, you're going to get the bad self-talk in your head, and it's going to tell you that you are too sensitive and that you are controlling and all this other stuff, and that is not going to help you. It's just going to send you right back to the beginning of the whole gaslit thing. So this is a really important time to practice self-care and self-love and positive self-talk, because if you don't, it's going to be really damaging for you in the end. And it's going to be harder for you to get out of that gaslighting experience. Also, it's an important thing to remember that not every argument is going to be gaslighting. There is a difference between a genuine disagreement and gaslighting. What makes gaslighting so different and unique is that with gaslighting, it's coming from one side. So only one person in the relationship is listening and considering the other person's perspective, and the other person is negating the person's perspective. So like, it's very one-sided. There are healthy ways to affirm someone's feelings and to not tell them that, affirming is not saying that the other person is always right, because that is actually another form of gaslighting, by saying like, oh, so you're just always right, aren't you? So basically a way to affirm somebody's emotions. So like, let's go back to the unfaithful husband again, because that seems to be the easiest example, even though it is very heteronormative, but it's the easiest. And so let's say Sarah is dating Bruce, and Bruce is he's spending a lot of time away from home, and he's spending a lot of late nights out with his friend. And so she feels hurt because she feels like he's putting other people's relationship before her, and she feels like she's being neglected. And so he could be like, oh, well, I'm not even out that late. Like, you're just being crazy. Like, you're just being overly sensitive and overly controlling. Like, what? Am I not allowed to have a guy's night? So that is a form of gaslighting. What he could have done is say, I feel that you are pulling away from the relationship, and I feel like you're being distant. And so I'm trying to get companionship with a different sort of relationship. So that could be affirming what's going on. Yes, I am spending a lot of time out with my guy friends and with my friends, and there's a lot of late nights where I'm not spending with you as much. And, but I'm doing it because of this. And that is when compromise can happen, while also validating the other person's experience and not negating the other person's experience. So that is a healthy way of affirming someone's feelings by not gaslighting them. So tip for you if you're ever arguing with your significant other. To continue with gaslighting, though, it's important to know that gaslighting is a form of abuse. So don't get it twisted. If you're a victim of gaslighting, that is a type of trauma that you've had to deal with and live with. And it is a form of abuse. So, a lot of people think that's, a form of debate, but it really isn't. So the next thing too is that people who are being gaslit aren't overly sensitive. There are some people who are going to be more, they're going to react to emotional abuse and emotional harm differently than others. And some people may be more affected by it than other people. And that's going to be for a variety of reasons. It could be all sorts of things. Like personality differences, for example. But it's really just understanding what your reality is. If you're experiencing something, you are experiencing something, and no one else can tell you that you're not experiencing that something, basically. So if you are someone who thinks that you are being gaslit, talk to your friends, really examine your emotions and understand that your feelings are valid. I love the journal idea about writing down exactly what the conversation was about and how it went and how you felt after the conversation and all that stuff. I think that's really important. And if you can, and if you have the resources, definitely, absolutely talk to a counselor or therapist about this, because it is a form of trauma. And you don't want, I kind of talked to it, I talked a little bit about this before with love bombing. People who are victims of this are going, it unfortunately may happen again. So you want to make sure that you can recognize gaslighting and put a name to it quickly so it doesn't happen again. And you have the tools in your toolbox, is what I like to do, to combat any gaslighting that may happen to you in the future. Hopefully not, but at least then you will know what it is. You can identify it quickly, and you can avoid that unfortunate situation, really. So that is going to conclude this segment, but stick around, because in the next segment, we're going to be talking about relationship anarchy. Sounds fun. Let's do it. But we're going to pause for a quick sponsor commercial break, so we'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Back, guys. So in this segment, we're going to be talking a little bit about relationship anarchy, what it is, and the kind of radical approach to love and friendship. This part is actually going to be kind of a follow-up on my polyamory episode. I really love this article. I found it really interesting. It was published in Mind, Body, Green, and is called "What is Relationship Anarchy? A Radical Approach to Love and Friendships." It was by, I'm gonna mess up her name, Cassina Boom. Oh man. But it was published July 29th of 2020, so just a few days ago, so pretty recent still. And she actually cites a 2017 study that states 1 in 5 people have engaged in some form of consensual non-monogamy before. So relationship anarchy is trying to get rid of the divide that between platonic relationship and sexual and romantic love that exist in society. And it's also trying to step away from the heteronormative and monogamous view on society. So basically it tries to kind of have an other option, or not really fight against, but have a different option other than, you marry one person, usually someone of the opposite sex, and you stay with them forever, and that friendships are lesser than compared to a romantic and sexual interest and love interest that's in your life. What relationship anarchy offers, though, is to try to get rid of that dichotomy where romantic love is always going to be greater than. And basically there was a relationship anarchy manifesto that was published in a pamphlet in 2006 and was written by Andy Nordgren. Oh boy. But I'm just terrible with pronouncing names in this segment, I guess. But the most important tenets of relationship anarchy is freedom, communication, and non-hierarchy. So, a lot of things that can be considered relationship anarchy can be polyamory, but can also be other things like having children with friends and, so like non-romantic partners, or, like kind of like it takes a village. And there's actually been a lot of studies that have shown that, children are still, they're not like negatively affected by being raised by multiple people. Something that you can kind of look into that. There was a really cool episode on Stuff You Missed in History class about, health class babies, and, there was basically, they had practice babies that they took from orphanages, right at the turn of the century in the 20th century. And, what they did was they had, students college students use real babies in a classroom to learn how to take care of them. And so every person in the classroom who was studying home economics, so they were like home ec babies, would raise the child and take care of the child with the supervision of a teacher. And, they did studies on these kids afterwards to see if they were well adjusted. And, these babies were usually in better shape than the other babies at the orphanage that they came from. So if you're interested in more of that, you can listen to the Stuff You Missed in History class about the home economics practice babies. But that is not really a form of relationship anarchy just because they were practice babies, but a form of relationship anarchy could be that. It could be you wanting to be romantically involved with a partner, but maybe you don't move in together. Maybe you have separate places. And it's also kind of stepping away from the heteronormative and monogamous view that society is the only type of relationship that it accepts. So it's a way of approaching relationships that rejects rules and expectations other than the ones the involved people agree on. So pretty much everyone's going to think it's weird, but I really like the tenets that it's based off of, which is freedom, communication, and non-hierarchy. And I am going to read like this manifesto to you as well. A lot of people hear anarchy and think it's like complete chaos and, like punk rockers and stuff like that. But really, it's in this sense too, it's kind of stepping away from the norm. And, it's violent in I guess an emotional way, because, it's violent in the sense that other people are going to be really thrown off by it and will not accept it, because it is, definitely a different culture to be a part of. It isn't for everyone. They said, in the article too, that if you are someone who is embarrassed by speaking your truth and embarrassed by talking about their feelings and communicating their feelings, that's when things are going to be problematic and difficult, because a lot of problems in relationships is that there are expectations that go along with a relationship. And so when you are dating someone, you label them as something, and there is an expectation that goes along with the label. I talked about this a little bit in the commitment episode that came out earlier this week, but if you don't communicate, there's going to be a lot of issues that might rise up, because if you just assume that everything's still okay, you have to continually communicate, because feelings might change. You change as a person, and this is why you need to continually communicate throughout the entire relationship to make sure that everybody is still on the same page. And that is a big thing with participating in some sort of relationship anarchy. Empathy is also really important. If you're someone who can't compassionatally consider other people's perspectives, or can do active listening and really listen to how your partner is communicating, it's going to be really hard for you to participate in some sort of relationship anarchy. There is no average relationship that is an anarchistic relationship, but some examples is it's basically going to be a mix of romantic and platonic life partners. You could live with these people, and everyone is going to be equally responsible for maintaining the household and making big decisions, or to have two romantic partners who aren't given time and precedence in one's life than one's platonic friends. So, like, basically, it just kind of tries to get rid of, romantic love and sexual love over the platonic love, and that, you could have a wife or a husband with, like, a boyfriend and a girlfriend, or some sort of throuple situation where there's like three people in a relationship and they're all equally contributing to the relationship. So it's just kind of getting rid of the normal monogamous man-woman dichotomy. So some of the tenets, because I said I was going to talk about the manifesto. So the first one, I'm just going to actually read this directly from the source, because this is the manifesto that was published in that pamphlet in 2006. So love is abundant and every relationship is unique. Love is not a limited source. You can love multiple people without it detracting from the love that you feel for each of them. Every relationship that you have is an entirely new creation between its two or more parties and should be approached as such. 2. Love and respect instead of entitlement. Your bond with someone does not give you the right to control or coerce them. They are an anonymous person who can act as they wish to. Love is not a byword for bossing someone around, nor is love only real when we're willing to compromise parts of ourselves for others. 3. Find your core set of relationship values. Focus on what you want and need when it comes to how you will treat and be treated by others. Don't be tempted to compromise on your inner values in order to try to keep a relationship that no longer serves you. 4. Heterosexism is rampant and out there, but don't let fear lead you. Be mindful of the way in which heterosexism, the assumption that heterosexuality is the only correct, moral, and desirable way to organize relationships, can corrupt your ideas about what is acceptable within relationships. Stay aware of the assumptions you hold about what gender means with relation to love and work to entangle them. Number 5, build for the lovely and unexpected. Be spontaneous in your connections. Don't feel held back by the shoulds or ought tos. Number 6, fake it till you make it. Breaking with monogamous heterosexist relationship norms is hard work. Setting out to do the work can feel like a tall mountain to climb. Push through and go for it nonetheless until it feels like second nature. 7. Trust is better. Choose to assume that your partner or partners want the best for you. When we approach our relationships with a bedrock of trust, we do not engage in validation-seeking behaviors that can drive unions apart. Number 8. Change through communication. Be in continuous dialogue with your partner or partners. Do not rely on sensing what they think or feel. Communication must be enacted at every step along the way in order to establish how things will function, not just when there are problems to solve. Without communication, people fall into old norms and can inadvertently hurt each other. Number 9. And this is the last one, customize your commitments. Do you want to have children together but never move in together? Do you want to get married but never have children? Do you want to maintain separate homes but be committed life partners? Whatever it is that you want, you have the power to make it happen. You don't have to travel along the accepted relationship escalator of dating exclusively, moving in, getting married, and having children. And I just really love those tenets. I feel that even if you're not someone who wants to have some sort of anarchistic relationship where you are, dating multiple people or having an open relationship or polyamorous relationship or whatever it is that you want, or have children with friends and not romantic partners, I think that living by those tenets and living by those 9 points that I just read out is extremely, extremely important. I have something that I have really struggled with dating and everything altogether is that I don't want to settle down. I don't want to buy a house. I would rather just kind of live in apartments until I find a city that I really enjoy. But I don't see that happening for many years. I want to travel and see all the different cities I like and spend time there and be more of a nomad, and meet and have connections with multiple people, all over the world and all over the country, and just see stuff from different points of view and talk to them. And I know I've met a lot of people who are really scared by that and get very turned off by that, because I found that dating and relationships have a lot of ownership around them. The person feels like they have to own you and that no one else can have you. And for me, for my opinion, that feels really unhealthy. And I would rather have all sorts of different relationships with different people and sometimes at the same time. And so maybe I'm coming from a different sort of viewpoint than other people do. But that's something that I would like to have as someone who is kind of not afraid of commitment, but views commitment in a different way than a lot of other people do. And I love those ideas of just being spontaneous, continually communicating, not being afraid to communicate about what you need in all types of relationships, in friendships, in sexual relationships, and in romantic relationships. Or if one person is all three of those things, you need to continually communicate throughout the relationship, because things change. You change as a person, you grow as a person, and especially if you are in a long-term relationship with someone, you are going to change. And even if you're not in a long-term relationship now, if you've had in the past, you know that things change. And that's why I think that, that's why I think that you may not be destined for one person your entire life. And that's okay. There are some people that, for that time in your life, if that's what you want and that's who you're with, and as long as it's healthy and not toxic and you enjoy that relationship and you enjoy that time with them, it's okay, you can step away from that relationship because you both may have grown and may have changed as people, and you might not need what that relationship is giving you right now, and that's fine. So all that being said, I really wish that there was a dating app or something for people who were interested in this sort of relationship, as I'm someone who sees myself in the future not staying in one place and just kind of moving around. And I don't know, I get, it really kind of turns me off when people feel like they need to own you and feel like they can have only you. It feels so I don't know, suffocating, and it doesn't feel healthy. I'm a person, I'm an anonymous person, not anonymous, autonomous person. And I don't like the idea of people wanting to own other people. Maybe that's crazy, but especially in, romantic relationships, other people have had you, other people can have you, but you're not being had by anyone. You're not being owned by anyone. It's just meeting people, and you're just allowed to connect on different levels with other different people. You're allowed to connect emotionally with other people. You're allowed to connect sexually with people, and if that sort of thing isn't for you, I totally understand. That's totally fine. I'm not trying to preach my ideas onto you, but I just think that more people should come at relationships with those views and those tenets in mind, and communication is always so important. I mean, the main reason why a lot of people divorce is because of lack of communication. Money is another big one. But if let's say you have multiple people in the household contributing, I feel like money would be less of an issue and less of an argument. So I don't know. I don't know. If you are interested in relationship anarchy and if you want to know more about it, I would definitely Google it and start looking into it a little bit more. This is kind of the first that I have heard of it. and that I've read those tenets, but I really like the ideas. And let me know, message me if you like these ideas, and let me know what you think about them. Even if you think that this is crazy and stupid, and come at me with your side of, against relationship anarchy. So that is going to finish off this segment, but stick around after the commercial break, because in the next one we're going to be talking about some audio erotic stories that you can listen to, and some of the better websites you can go for that. But yeah, so we are going to pause for a quick commercial break and be right back.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
And welcome back. So, audio porn. Audio porn is exactly what it sounds like. It basically is erotic stories that you listen to. I think audio porn is really great. And if you haven't tried it, I would recommend, if you're someone who kind of feels gross after watching porn, where you shouldn't, but it is a very common thing. But I say that you shouldn't because porn is a thing that everyone does and uses and watches, and it's okay. And especially, it's really great too if you pay for the porn that you're watching, because that way you're directly supporting, oh boy, I couldn't think of that word, directly supporting the actors involved. So highly recommend paying for the porn that you use. But audio porn is really great because you can kind of exercise your imagination and your visual imagination while still getting off. So I actually got this from an article called 10 Places to Get Actually Hot Audio Porn and Erotica. And it was published in Self on July 24, 2020, and written by Anna Borgs. Again, it's the names. Some of these are paid for, and some of these are free. You can also just Google like erotica, erotica stories or, audio porn, and I'm sure you'll find stuff. But some of these I've checked out and stuff like that. But I'm kind of scrolling through the list now. But some of them are paid for, some of them are free, like I said. So let's get right into it. So Dipsia is, especially, I think is geared a little bit more to women. From my surfing on the web, it is paid. So this one is $9 a month for, unlimited stuff. I think there might actually be some samples though that you could listen to that is free. So it is original audio stories, and it's often called the headspace of erotica, because it also has wellness content that will kind of help you connect to your own desires and your own sexual needs and wants and things like that. So it has a huge library of stuff. It really has a lot. It also has guided how-tos, and that cover anything from like masturbation to how to sex and how to edge and things like that. So that is all on there. So definitely you can get how-to stuff, even if you don't want the erotica stories. So that's kind of cool, especially if you're someone who already likes podcasts and things like that. This one is just a little bit more of the sexual content, not safe for work kind of thing. So the next one is going to be Quinn. This is a free one, and this one is really easy to find stuff by category, so you can search by gender, sexuality, and even specific kinks. So you can search tags with like people with accents and BDSM and like public sex and teacher-student kind of thing. So you can search this by tags too, which that is why Quinn, a lot of people will use that and things like that. So, it'll have narrated scenes, and users can even upload their own stuff. So they can upload audio, with them actually masturbating or them with their consenting partners. So that is going to be kind of not so much audio stories, but it's going to be like the next best thing if you don't want to use visual audio. And I know as a woman trying to find, or not, oh God, not visual audio, but visual porn. As a woman, sometimes, there is some porn out there that, does feel icky, but not icky because you feel like ashamed of watching porn, but like you don't know if like sometimes the woman doesn't look like she's enjoying it, so sometimes it can be hard to like find stuff. With audio, it's all in your mind's eye, and if you're doing like narrated stories, and this kind of thing where it's like a real person with their partner, like you know that it's real and you can kind of, yeah, so it's a lot easier to be able to just kind of make a picture in your mind, and you don't have to like wonder, is that person really enjoying it? Because I can't really tell. And, you know, because you can usually tell if they're like faking it or something like that. Because, I mean, you know, sex workers are people too, but it's also their job. So, you know, like, you don't know if this is just acting or whatever. So, anyway, moving on. So, number 3 is Tumblr. This is going to be free, but Tumblr really cracked down on like their sex stuff that was on there, which is actually a whole big thing that I'd love to talk about at some point, because Tumblr was a really good point in the internet that was really geared towards queer folk and women and porn for those types of people, that was geared directly towards them. Because like I said, there's some porn that can be really tough to watch if you are someone like that. But yeah, Tumblr though still has audio stuff that you can use. And this one is usually user submitted clips. But it's great for anyone who likes amateur porn and is going to have like a real, these are 2 partners that I know are real and consenting and that kind of thing. So you can search stuff on Tumblr too. So you can search like dirty talk, instructional, and narrative, and you can find blogs on how to get it. But there are some blogs that are let me hear it, sounds of pleasure, and audio orgasm. So those you can find directly on Tumblr and get some stuff too. So number 4, Audible and Scribd actually are 2 really big places to get audio porn. So Audible, I know you do have to pay for. Scribd or Scribd, I actually haven't heard of that one. I have heard of Audible though. Audible is a subscription audiobook service, but they have like just obviously, you know, from this, they have so much stuff on there. They have so many books and everything, but they have other books that are not as erotic as maybe some of the other stuff on here, but they have like sexier books, you know, that you can search. So if you go on Audible, if you already have an Audible subscription, this is really cool too. You can just search erotica and then narrow it down by most popular or most listened to or most downloaded or whatever. And then, yeah, you can, it's also too, you can just kind of dip your toe into listening to erotica and things like that. So it's not as sexy, but there's still going to be erotica books on Audible that, you know, you can listen to. Okay, so moving on to number 5, though, is called Audio Desires. They are newer, so they're not going to have as huge of a library as, say, something like Dipsia or that has been around for a while. This one is free for limited access, but $4 a month for premium. And this one is cool because it has a whole section dedicated to ASMR. So if you're someone who is affected by ASMR and you get like those brain tingles, this is a great option for you. And it's mostly, you know, kind of pointed towards women and couples, but they actually will have couple stories that leaves intermissions. So you and your person can like kind of get in on that action, you know, so you can listen to it with your partner. So that is going to be a little bit more of a unique experience than some of these other ones. So the next one is going to be Girl on the Net. So she is a UK-based sex blogger, and she does a lot more than just produce audible porn, but it's the thing that she's most there for. It is free, but I would recommend that you support her Patreon. Again, this is we want to support sex workers and support their work and things like that. But she has a bunch of stuff on her website if you just go to girlonthenet.com. It's great for BDSM if you're into that. Has a lot of to choose from. And as a bonus, she'll also link her other sex bloggers who do audio erotica too, such as On Queer Street. So if you go to her website, you're probably going to find a lot of information. If you're not so much into her, maybe you might find somebody else on her website that she's linked to that does work too. Okay, so number 7 is Literotica. This is a big one that is also free. So this is usually just known for its written stories. So that's another thing to explore too, if you kind of want to, just see what you like and what you enjoy. So that one is where you're just going to be reading, erotic stories. But they also have a pretty solid collection of, like audio erotica too. So there's a lot of narrative stuff, and mostly like just stories that you could listen to too. So not so much like actual recordings of, people, but you know, this one is still, you can try it for free. If you hate it, don't ever use it again. But you know, if you do, great. All right. Number 8. So this one I've never heard of. It's Vibes Chat. So it is an app, with a vibrator. So if you buy the vibrator, it's called Vibes Vibrator. This is a little bit more expensive. It's $95, but a lot of I would recommend at some point, you know, really spending money on a really expensive sex toy, or not a really expensive, but you know, just saving up for a sex toy, because, you know, that's self-love if I ever heard of it. But this is actually really cool because if you're in a long distance relationship, it is a remote control vibrator, and it can be good for long distance play. So the Vibes vibrator, like if you and your partner have the app, your partner can like control the vibrator with the app, which is why it's so expensive. But it also it can sync with, the story. There are audio stories on the app, and the vibrator will sync to the app. It's crazy. So it vibrates in time with the narration. Like, what? Like, and the library has a mix of free and for purchase stories that you can listen to, without the Vibe too. Like, if you don't have the vibrator, you can also just use the app to listen to the stories. But I've never heard of this, and if you have $95 probably plus shipping and handling, the app is free. But yeah, like I said, they have per story pricing for the stories too to listen to. And again, Reddit. So, Reddit is another one. I think Tumblr though, mostly cracked down. I think it was Tumblr and Reddit that really kind of got rid of a lot of their visual porn that they had. And like GIFs and stuff like that. But there are some Reddit like threads that have a lot of audio porn too. So, some threads to go to is Gone Wild Audio and Pillow Talk Audio. So, there's also going to be subreddits that allow you to post requests that other users can fill. So if you are not, really just good at Reddit and how to find stuff, and if you can just make a Reddit account and post in a subreddit and, people can find. Some subreddits will have tags that you can use so you can find something that you're into. But, it might be kind of difficult to find something that you really like. But, it's free. So, whatever. And the last one is going to be MJoy. So this is another one that I haven't heard of. It's another one that is, towards more wellness rather than porn, but it will have guided audio practices and pleasurable meditations. So, if you do want to work on your sexual intimacy and things like that and really focus on what you like, which I highly recommend, which is why masturbation is so important, because you need to know what you like so you can tell your partner what you like in the bedroom. So you'll have a more pleasurable experience when you're actually having sex. So that's why masturbation is so important. Anyway, it also has erotic stories as well. But it's definitely going to be more of a holistic app. It's free for limited access and $30 a year for a premium. So $30 a year actually isn't that bad because you're going to get a whole year of content. But yeah, so it's going to be a little bit more like Headspace. But it's a good place to explore your own desires and your own sexual well-being. And if that's something that seems very embarrassing to you, where you don't want to talk to somebody else, or if you don't want to see like a sex therapist or things like that, this is a really great place to start. And this is directly from the article. It says it's kind of like taking a class about your own body and sexuality, and the homework includes listening to erotica. So sounds pretty cool if you want to get more in touch with your sexuality and what you enjoy, which I highly recommend everyone does at some point. So yeah, that is going to conclude the podcast. I want to thank you so much for listening, and I hope you liked it. Please, interact with us on the social medias. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search GSMC Relationship Podcast and we'll come up. We'll be there. I would also love, if you would subscribe and rate and review the podcast on Apple iTunes. We're available on like Spotify and things like that. I think Spotify now has a ranking. Before it was just Apple iTunes, and like all of the rankings came from Apple iTunes, but now there's stuff on Spotify. So I haven't checked personally if you can leave ratings and reviews on Spotify. But just subscribe. It'd be pretty cool if you did. Cause, if you did, you'd be like super cool. And you can be my friend. Anyway. But guys, thanks so much for listening to the GSMC Relationship Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I will see you guys next week, and have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.